monitoring the chat, so you can put questions in chat and we'll keep an eye on it, and Tim will be able to answer questions as they come up. Thank you. Tim, it's all yours.
Great. Thanks, Brenda. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me, and thanks to Junior Achievement for giving us this opportunity to come speak with you today. I think this is a really important session. I understand you guys have been working on this for a while, and to be honest, like I wish when I went through school, I had something like this, but sadly we did not. So a little bit about me. So born and raised in Halifax. I currently run CIBC's commercial banking for Nova Scotia and our large corporate business for Atlantic Canada. So what that means is we lend money to companies. So like companies want to build stuff or buy stuff, we give them lots of money, and budgeting, which we're going to talk about today, is a really important part of how they run their businesses, and something that's just important personally and professionally. So long story short, but I've kind of spent 13 years in Toronto, 3 years in Calgary, and happy to be back home in Halifax and speaking with you guys today. So I think the topic for today is all about moving out. And so when you think about moving out of your house, I guess this is kind of grade 9 students, so you're not still a bit of ways from that, but it's fun to think about. And I can tell you, like, a lot of exciting things about moving out are you kind of get to, you know, pick what you eat, decide when you go to bed, nobody to kind of tell you what to do, can watch what you want when you want. Like, those are a lot of great things about living on your own, and you know, someday you'll all kind of get there. It also comes along with things that you don't think about a lot, which is you got to pick up after yourself. If the mess is yours, you gotta take care of it yourself, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with it outside of sort of cleaning up, making your own meals, and importantly, paying your own bills, which is something that always used to shock me when I moved out on my own, and how big and important bills can be, and something that I never accounted for. So hopefully today I'll give you a little bit of insight into exactly how to spend your money and where you want to spend your money, because you still want to do fun stuff, and you don't want to be getting all kinds of debt to do that, because that's something that's going to catch up with you over a long period of time. So today I think what we're going to do is think a little bit about how to spend our money. And there's a great tool. If you guys have your workbook there, I think it's page 9, where we're going to start and talk about moving day. So maybe just give everybody a couple seconds to get their booklets open. It's called Moving Day on the top left part of the sheet. You've got 2 columns when you get there. There's one on the left side called monthly budget. That's the one we're going to be talking about. The revised budget, I think, is for the next part of the session, so that's not what we're going to be filling out today. And so as we think about kind of moving out, there's a couple of things you can think of. So like, you know, you probably all have a bunch of friends. Moving out together with your friends is a lot of fun. It's also a cheaper way to afford something. So when you look in and around, I spent last night looking up how much it costs to kind of rent apartments in and around Truro. So apologies to the Uniac. I think it'd probably be pretty similar there, but for kind of a 1-bedroom apartment in Truro, it's about $1,000 a month. So if you want to live by yourself in your sheet, you can put $1,000 in. If you think you're going to live with a couple of friends, then you could put kind of either $500 or $350 a month about. So just put in there what you think. You can afford, like, I guess probably unlikely out of school that you're going to buy a house out of the gate. And the reason for that is banks, big mean banks like us, always expect people to come with a down payment. So down payment is just, you've got to save a bunch of money. If you buy a house for $100,000, we're not going to lend you $100,000. We'll lend you $80,000. So that other $20,000 has to come from you guys. It has to come from saving. So probably not going to buy a house right out of the first time you move out of your parents' house. So I'd suggest probably looking at the apartments, probably a more realistic option. And so one thing to consider, and not that there's any reason that you guys would have done this, but when you look kind of in rural Nova Scotia, the rent for a 1-bedroom is about $1,000. A 2-bedroom was $1,200. When you look in Halifax, the rent goes up, and when you go to move to any bigger center, it goes up. So a similar apartment, so a 2-bedroom apartment in Halifax would go for about $2,200 a month. So if you think about living with two of your friends now, instead of coming up with $600, you got to come up with $1,100. So you got to think about kind of where you're going to live, because that's going to impact kind of some of the other decisions that we work through today. So generally, as a rule of thumb, so we'll move on to the second row of this slide, is kind of utilities. So you want to make sure your house or your apartment is heated and that you've got electricity. And so that's important. And generally, a good rule of thumb is that's about 25% of what your rent is. So if you're looking at a $1,000 rental apartment in Truro, then you're going to look at about $250 a month in your utilities just to keep yourself warm and make sure you have lights to turn on, something to power your PS5 or your TV. So important things that you got to think about when you're coming up with your budget. So we kind of have in here, we'll talk about it a little bit later, is internet too. So I'm pretty sure probably nobody, when you guys move out, are going to be subscribing to cable. I'd leave that to people over 40 like me and Brenda. But even internet services. So depending on how much you want to do on the internet, like the cheap package for internet and Wi-Fi in your house is $110 a month. That can get up to easily $130, $150 a month too, if you kind of want all the bells and whistles that go along with your Wi-Fi. So that's over and above your utility costs. So that's something that you got to factor into your budget. I'm pretty sure everybody on this call is going to want to have internet and Wi-Fi in their home. So please make sure you include that in your budget, because I'm feeling it's probably going to be the last thing you're going to want to modify before you kind of finalize this program. So this is great. So you've moved out, you've got your apartment, you've got heat, you've got electricity, you've got your internet set up. So now you got to get to and from work. And so transportation's another.
Tim,
Yes.
just a message in chat, just wondering if they can pause for just a minute and let the students kind of catch up to you, because
Sure.
they're still trying to find their page and that sort of thing. So if we just pause for just about a minute,
Yep.
everybody should be on page 9.
Mhm.
And as Tim said, we're using the first column. And so he's gone over the place to live and the utilities, and we'll pause before we get into the cars for about 1 minute, and then you can get started again. So they're just catching up to you.
Thanks, Brenda. I was a little
No
excited.
worries.
Oh, yeah. So I'll tell a funny story. When I rented my first apartment in Halifax, I think I was paying, I want to say $800 for a 1,300 square foot place. And I moved to Toronto and I was paying $1,500 for a 500 square foot place. So that would have been in 2002. So it was basically twice as much for half the space. So it's really something that can eat away at your earnings. So while you can make some more money in some of the larger centers like Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver, the costs are also much higher. So you got to kind of consider both sides. How much am I going to make, but how much is it going to cost? Because really what you're left with at the end of the day is the important part. So is it okay to think, Brenda, everybody's kind of got their page 9? I can go back over. So for place to live, this was kind of figuring out the rent. Are you going to live with somebody? Are you going to live by yourself? For utilities, that's about 25%. So if you're going to spend $1,000 on your place, it's about $250. And then your internet's about $110 to $130 a month, depending on how much you do online. So those are some important things to consider. So we're going to talk about your jobs. When you're living on your own, you have to pay for these things. So you have to have a job somewhere. That means you got to get to and from your job. So again, if you live kind of outside of a large center, chances are you're going to probably need a car. If you live in a larger center, you're going to have to get either a monthly bus pass or some other form of transportation. So this model has kind of $80 a month for a bus pass. Definitely a cheap option if that's kind of something that works for you. But if you own a car, you kind of have something that nobody ever really considers in their budget, which is gas. You got to get to and from, so you got to fill up your car. I live in Halifax and I've got about call it a 10, 15-minute drive to work. I'm filling up my car probably about twice a month. So it's probably about $150 is probably not far off from what the budget would be for that. And so you got to decide kind of what works for you. So when you look at buying a small car, it can be anywhere around $200 a month. If you want a full-size car, it's around $450. If you want something big, it can easily be $450 to $800 a month. And so you really got to figure out what your needs are and what you want to be driving around or what you want to spend. And so while that's all exciting and you figure out, I put e-bikes on there. I didn't know some people might be able to use those for 6 to 8 months of the year, but not really a great year-round option. So you could take a bus pass for part of the year and you could e-bike. There's a bunch of great biking trails and roads, at least in Halifax, to get to and from downtown. Haven't seen too many people. So sorry, I'm just reading the question here. How do we know our monthly budget if we skip page 7? Not really sure what's on page 7. Just one second.
It's pretty much a different activity, so we're not really looking at that, Alea. We're thinking about our own personal budget. I know that there was an activity to budget for somebody else on page 7, but this is actually you thinking about your budget and what you would need to spend on a monthly basis when you move out on your own. How does that sound?
Thanks, Brenda. So yeah, so I'm just going to stop for a second, just let everybody digest that. So you got to kind of make a decision. Are you going to have a car? Are you going to take a bus? Are you going to get an e-bike? And with sort of the car options, what comes along with that really I didn't think about when I got my first car was insurance. And when you're young, you tend to drive a little faster and be a little riskier. And so insurance companies penalize you for that. And so generally you have to pay higher insurance than older people. And so you see in bucket B, we have insurance for a small car, a full-size car, an SUV. This is actually can be a really high cost, and it's something that you do have to factor in your transportation budget because it is really important, and you can't drive a car without insurance. So it's against the law, so it's something that you have to pay. And then depending on how old your car is, you got a budget for maintenance. So while you might not spend $50 a month, usually every couple of years you got to buy something, whether it's an oil change or some new tires or something will break on your car. And so setting aside some money to make sure you've got something to pay for those expenses when they come up is also a consideration. So leaving this slide, I think the message is probably cars are expensive. If you can get to and from work without driving a car, you're probably in great shape. In big cities, that's something that's possible with subways and other great public transportation. Sometimes just where your work is located and what the requirements of the job, you just need a car. So you guys decide. We're gonna move on from there. I'll give you a second just for everybody to finish picking because there's 3 choices there, whether you want to do A, B, or C, and then that's gonna implement, you gotta add those all up and put that into your monthly budget column. Okay. So now here's one of the tricky ones is food. So food is something that's really interesting because you're all probably used to your parents going out and getting food and you just open the grocery or the fridge and it's full or it's not full. And if it's not full, you ask your parents to go get more and they go get more and then you come back and then it just comes from this magical place called the grocery store. So I think when I first moved out was understanding how expensive food can be, especially depending on how you want to eat. Getting things like Kraft Dinner and pizza pretty cheap, but not very good for you. Buying things like fresh fruit and vegetable on a regular basis can be very expensive. So someone who first moved out, I really didn't pay much attention to the prices of things, and I went out and got a bunch of grapes like I would have any other time of year. But for those of you who wouldn't know, grapes fluctuate a lot in price during the year. So in the summertime, a group of grapes can cost you like $4 or $6. I bought them at the wrong time of the year, and the bunch of grapes that I got was about $16. And so it was the first and last time I bought grapes that time of year. But it's really important if you want to eat healthy. It does cost a lot. So when you look at your budget, It says anywhere from $240 to $450 a month, really determined on what you like to eat. You can't eat Cheerios for 3 meals a day all the time. You gotta mix it up a bit. So, you know, one way to do it is to think about what you eat every day, try to add it up, and then multiply it by 30, and that's what you're gonna need for the month. So I'll just let you guys take a second and figure out what you like to eat and try to put a number on it. A box of cereal is usually around $4 or $5. Milk can be anywhere from $3 to $5. Breads, $3 to $5. And then jars of peanut butter, depending on if that's what you like, those ones can be anywhere from $3 to $7. So, and vegetables, frozen veggies are usually around $4 to $6 for a big pack of frozen vegetables and last you a couple of days. So all kinds of things to think about. You're gonna have your friends over, gotta get some chips and dip. So like, anyways, you guys gotta think about how you wanna eat because you're on your own now. So you get to pick, which is a lot of fun, but cooking also is a lot of work. So that's it for food. So like we'll flip the page over. So we're at the top of, so by leaving this one, you should have completed kind of all of page 9 in the left-hand column. You should have numbers in there for everything. So on page 10 at the top, you should see furniture. So now you've got your place, you've got your heat, you've got your electricity, you got your Wi-Fi. Your fridge is hopefully full, and now you got a place. The problem is you don't have a place to sit down. You don't have a place to sleep. So with any luck, your folks will let you take your bed with you, which is a great start. Sleeping's important. You still probably want to sit on something. You probably want to watch something on TV, whether it's Netflix, Prime, or whatever it is that you're interested in. And so, you know, these things cost money. And so getting couches, usually everybody kind of starts out going to IKEA. IKEA's got a lot of very affordable, decent items to live on. I think I certainly got most of my furniture from there when I first moved out. You can go on Kijiji or Facebook Marketplace. A lot of people trading kind of used stuff's another good place to get reasonably priced furniture. But you're gonna have to decide kind of what you want to do, if you're just gonna sleep on your couch or what. And so depending on that, you got to make a budget for how much you're going to spend. And so one way to do that is to buy them a piece at a time. You don't have to buy them all at once. Probably a couch and a bed and a TV is probably a good place to start if you were like me. And then you kind of add pieces as you kind of continue to make more money. So you got a couple options on the sheet. You can pick living on milk crates. A bunch of my friends in university just put their mattresses on milk crates is how they used to sleep. It was cheap and comfortable, apparently. Getting used couches is fine too. So there's a lot of people just upgrading their stuff. And then if you want to buy new stuff, you got to make a big budget because new furniture does cost a lot of money. So I'll just leave that with you guys to decide sort of what you want to pick. Maybe a good idea is to kind of think about all the things in your own house and, you know, what of those things do you think you really need? There's all kinds of little things you don't think of, like lamps, forks and knives, glasses, all kinds of little things that just you use every day, but you don't really think about. So just give everyone a second. And Brenda, we're on till 9:35, right? So kind of got another 8 minutes. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
we're on till 9:35, and then we'll actually have new people joining and another volunteer. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to get through this a little bit quicker. So entertainment, so this is important, right? So like you've got all the things we talked about, your house, your heat, your internet, your food, you've got something to sit on, you can watch TV or play games. So now it's like, what do you want to do with your free time? Do you want to go out with your friends? Do you want to buy a PS5? Do you want to get latest and greatest games? Like those things all cost money. And so budgeting, including some of that in your budget, you don't just want to work and go home and do nothing. So like you kind of got a budget for these things because they cost money. And so thinking about what you like to do, they kind of gave some examples here. Is go out for coffee with friends. I'm guessing that's probably not a lot of what you guys do, but going to the movies, playing video games, all that stuff's a lot of fun. So try to allocate some money for that one. Smartphones, this is something I suspect everybody on the call has. So like these data plans can be quite expensive. So assuming that you're going to want internet at home and your smartphone, like small data plans are $60, large plans at least 100. I know a lot of people that kind of have multiple family members and they're well over $100 a month just on your data plans. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be you absolutely have to have it. So you probably, no data plans, probably not going to be much of an option. So I'd suggest probably starting out around $60 is probably a good one to use for the purposes of this example. On clothing, actually everybody on this phone probably has a better idea what their data plan is than me. So pick whatever makes sense to you. So you got clothing next. So you're going to take everything from your house, but sooner or later that stuff's going to wear out and you're going to have to buy something new. And so budgeting each month the same way we did for our entertainment and for our furniture and for our car, as these expenses come up, sooner or later you're going to want to buy a new sweater or shirt, shorts, sunglasses, hats, shoes, you name it. So you got to kind of set money aside for that if that's kind of what you like to spend your money on. And so again, you can go thrift stores for stuff that's kind of cheap. You can buy all kinds of new stuff, or you can, if this is sort of your love and passion, set aside a lot of money every month to go do it. It's all going to be really, you're going to find in the next part of this exercise, driven by how much money you have and how much income you have to kind of spend on these things. Lastly, I'm going to chat a bit about miscellaneous. And just like the car insurance that I talked about earlier, it's something that you don't think about in your own house. And stuff like toilet paper, soap, shampoo, stuff to clean your house with, vacuum cleaners. Like there's all kinds of other things that you use every day, but you don't really think about. And when you move out, it's stuff that occurs. You're like, wow, I don't have anything to vacuum my floors. I don't have anything to sweep my floor. I don't have anything to clean my bathroom with. All kinds of things that cost money and you use them regularly. And so you got to kind of think about, you know, what household products do I use? What personal products do I use? You know, you have to go out and get your teeth cleaned every 6 months or 12 months. So that costs money if your company doesn't have benefits that cover it. Sometimes companies will pay for that stuff for employees. So if you're fortunate enough to work for a company that does that, then good for you. You probably don't need to set aside money for it, but not every company does. And so some people do have to save to make sure that your teeth are clean. Emergency savings, it's always important to know, kind of set aside some money because you just never know what emergencies might come up. So it's smart to set some cash aside for that. And the other important thing is, you know, you don't just want to work, go home, eat. It's nice to do travel and other things beyond just your regular entertainment. So some people set aside money each month to save up for vacations, whether that's going to Florida or somewhere sunny, somewhere else in Canada, all kinds of fun stuff. So like when you look into flights, going to Toronto from Halifax, it's usually around $600 or $700 just for your flight. Hotels there about $200 a night. So you can easily get to kind of $1,300, $1,400 for a short 3 or 4 day trip. And you haven't eaten anything and you haven't gone and done anything there yet, whether you want to go to a Blue Jays game or a Leafs game or something like that. Those things are all very expensive things to do. And so if that's something that you do like to do, it's important to kind of budget for it. And so they've got $150 in here. So that's that's probably enough to let you go spend a nice week somewhere once a year. So if that's something that's important to you, it's probably a good thing to include in your budget. So now I guess you've got, hopefully for now, I'll give you a couple minutes to fill out the miscellaneous section and think about what things you'd be buying for your house, like shampoo, soap, all those things. I think it's important to tick those boxes. You do need that stuff. And then you're going to have to add all of these columns up. So if you go back to your page 9 and through everything on page 10, you're going to end up with a total monthly living that you think, based on kind of all of the things we talked about, would be appropriate for you. So this is really an important part before you get to the next exercise. You're kind of starting out with, this is all the ways that I think about how I want to live my life when I move out of my parents' house. This would be really fun for me. Hopefully living with friends is a lot of fun. It helps you with costs. I think when you're looking at this stuff, it's really important to kind of consider that as a really viable option, because it really lets you have some more money to do some of the fun things that you like to do. So I guess, Brenda, we're 2 minutes away. I guess probably take 2 minutes for everybody to kind of go back through their pages and total it all up. I'll talk just a bit about, like, I think this is really important for individuals when banks look to like lend people money for things, making sure people are operating within a budget and they're not just borrowing money to pay for their lifestyle is generally a pretty important thing. Whenever you want to go to a bank to buy a house, to get a loan for a car, any of those things are very important things. So budgeting is something that is a very, very important part of just how you manage your day-to-day life. So you guys are still a long way away from having to do this, but I think it's really important and exciting that you're actually working through this exercise today. So hopefully it was a little bit of information on kind of the budgeting process. I think your next stage is you're going to all get assigned some jobs, which is even more interesting. You're going to figure out how well your budget fits with how much money you make. So I just guess like to finish by saying thanks, Brenda and Junior Achievement, for having me. Hopefully next time we'll be able to do it in person, but really appreciate having the opportunity to come and speak to you guys today.
And thank you, Tim. So to the students, your teacher will give you some more time to kind of finish the activity. And then, as Tim said, they're going to give you a paycheck, and you'll get a chance to use that second column as you revise your budget and figure out what you can afford and can't afford based on the job that you've been given by the teacher. So I hope everybody enjoyed it this morning. Thank you so much, Tim. That was awesome. I love that, you know, we get to hear from real people who know what it's like, especially living in Toronto and, you know, some of the extra expenses that come with living in some of the bigger cities that we don't always think about when we're making those plans.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Brenda. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
All right, thanks. I'm going to stop the recording as well. If I can remember how, there's the button. Thanks, Tim.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, everybody else is, I am watching the chat, so if you have any last minute questions, you can let me know. I thought I stopped recording, but apparently it's still recording. Let's try this again. Let's stop recording. Yes.